All right. So this quarter is going to be about faith, and this is our third class into this study. And first class was really just a conversation about what is faith and some big basic overview type questions. And then last Sunday morning was the first class where we talked about the very foundational meaning of faith is belief. And that's where you see like the verb form. I have faith. What is that? Faith in action. What does that mean? It means to believe. That's the way that it's treated in the Bible, is to believe. And so I really like, I hope that I remember this forever, but I really like that one quote that we read from last week that said, faith is more than belief, but it is certainly not less. That's the thing that's in my head now about this subject. And so what does it mean to have faith? To believe God, to believe everything that He says, everything that He did, everything in His Word. And so let me just stop here. Are there any comments or questions? Anything that you thought of from that last class that you'd like to add? Now would be a good time before we move into a new subject. Okay, well, the new subject then is going to be still connected to believing, but I said I wasn't sure if I wanted to do the miracles class yet, and a couple people said do it, so we're going to. I thought it might be a good idea to look at these passages. Is there 4 of them or 5 of them? Maybe we'll just look at 4 of them. Can somebody go to each one of those passages up there? Like just start turning. And when we get there, I'll call out a reader, because if you were to just ask a question on the internet, what does faith mean? What does it mean to have faith? And you're going to get some kind of a biblical passage returned back. These are going to be on that list. And so, since we're talking about faith, it's probably not a bad idea to at least get a sense of what's going on in these different passages. So, Hebrews 11:1, does somebody have that for us, Jake?
Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen.
Right, so I don't have any specific questions on these. I want to stop and process what Jake just read for us. Is there anything that you would say about this? Things hoped for. So if faith points us towards something that's hoped for, it's not here now, right? I like to say this whenever we talk about the difference between this world and spiritual things. This world is here and now. People use that phrase a lot, here and now. Our Christianity is there and later. Not here, not now, there and later. And so hoped for is there. Faith is hope, something. Conviction of things not seen. I'm convicted even though I don't now see it in front of me. These are some of the elements that are going to have to be a part of our faith and what we're talking about. Anything you want to say on that one? Yeah, Maria?
Don't you think hope is sort of like a necessary condition for faith? Even if you're absent of hope, Jesus is the ultimate hope for us.
Yeah. I would not say that faith and hope are synonyms, because I have 100% faith that eternal hell is a thing, and I sure don't hope for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I believe, I completely am convinced. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, next verse up there. You'll see some more of this hope thing, I think, right now. Romans 8:23-25. Who's got that one? Yeah, Brennan.
And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience.
This is what we've been talking about. We're waiting for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. In that hope, we were saved. But we don't see it now, yet. Next, this will be the last one. 2 Corinthians 4:16-18. Who's got that one, Dave?
So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. This light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. As we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient. The things that are unseen are eternal.
Yeah. I think there's this common thread that runs through all of these different passages of what faith is. But one thing that I want us to talk about in this study is this concept of what faith is not. And almost always when you talk about faith, somebody will either say the words blind faith, or the concept is there to talk about blind faith. And what I did was I just went to ChatGPT and I said, define blind faith. And I'm going to throw that up on the screen here for a second, but I want to ask you first, what do you think of when I say the words blind faith? And is that the same kind of faith that we're describing whenever we talk about biblical faith, the kind of faith that we're looking for this quarter when we say, help my unbelief or increase our faith? Where are the differences in blind faith and our faith? Yeah, Nick?
I think faith without seeing is faith in things that we cannot physically see with our eyes, but blind faith is referring to faith without reason, which is very different.
Yeah, that's just about as good as, I think I heard one time, this was years and years and years ago, somebody talked about, I was asking one of the kids in Bible class, a kid, hey, what does it mean to have faith? And this kid said, believing in things that you know aren't real. No. No, that's not what faith is, And so I thought this was really, I did not intend for this to happen, but it's in chart form. But I said to ChatGPT, define blind faith, and it gave me this paragraph. And it was really cool because in every sentence of the paragraph, it's like, yes, no. Yes, no. And it just goes like 4 or 5 different times. And so let's look at this. What is blind faith? A strong and unwavering belief in something or someone. Yes. But there's a sentence. And then the sentence keeps on going. Without relying on evidence, logic, or critical examination. No. No. It's like, so that version of blind faith is something like strongly believing in something without reason, without evidence. And I think most people's concept of faith is, I'm just going to believe. Without any sense of reason to believe, I'm just going to choose to believe. And what we're going to do this morning is to say that is not biblical faith. That's not what it is.
Is blind faith more when you're going to do something and you have no idea what the outcome is going to be? But faith is, we know what our outcome is going to be. Instead of doing something.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. It's like, I know what the outcome is going to be. Good, the presence of God, heaven, whatever you want to call it. What's that going to be like? I have no idea. It's unseen. I don't know. I know it's good. I know it's resurrection and not death. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, but then I want to jump a little bit more into the outcome. I'm uncertain of the outcome, or I know what the outcome is going to be. What I want to dive into is, so why do I believe it then? Is it just because I'm choosing to make this leap of blind faith? Did you have more?
Well, I mean, you said we'll be with God, but we don't know what it'll be like. Is it more we don't know, or we just can't imagine? Or is that the same thing?
Yeah, I would stick with the biblical things that we saw. It's unseen. I haven't seen it. I'm hoping for it. But hope that is hope that is not seen. It's there and later. You got a better way to explain it?
I've got something.
A way to explain it?
I think about this, and, we've lived on this earth for however many years we've lived on this earth, and every single season has happened, and we can chart seasons. However, we don't know by seeing it that spring is coming and summer's coming and then it's going to continue. However, we've got all the evidence and the years of experience in the past that our future is going to happen that way.
Yeah, that is a better way.
What God's doing is demonstrating, in my opinion, that He's trustworthy to believe in His promises, and promises that have yet been seen. You got your illustration of using Abraham in previous classes, his faith, and all those things weren't necessarily realized in his time frame, but God made it happen so that we can see that history and follow this cycle of God's committed pattern to those who believe.
So, our faith or our hope in the future is based upon something in the past. But it's not just like, oh, hey, I hope it warms up. I really do hope it warms up. That's not an empty hope, like it's based upon something in the past. I'll throw the rest of these up. I don't want to just drag this out. But this is the ChatGPT. Faith implies a trust or confidence. Yes, that is not based on rational understanding. No. So as we go through this, I want you to think, don't think faith in all of the things on the left. Don't think that that is without reason or without evidence or without logic or something like that. That's not the faith that we're describing. So let's do this. Go to Exodus 4. And I really hope, my goal is to work through at least two things this morning. I want to work through the Exodus, three separate things with the Exodus, Moses talking to the people, let's use the word convincing. Moses convincing the people, Moses convincing Pharaoh, and the example of the Red Sea. I want to talk about three things with the Exodus, and then I want to talk about Jesus and miracles in the Gospels and beyond, but probably we'll only have time for the Gospels. So I'll throw this up there. Okay, can somebody please read for us Exodus 4 verses 1 through 9?
Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" Then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake and turned it back into the staff in his hand. This, says the Lord, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. And the Lord said, "Put your hand inside your cloak." So Moses put his hand into his cloak. When he took it out, the said, if they do not believe, if they don't believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground.
So, God tells Moses, go to the Israelites in Egypt and tell them these things and say, God is going to deliver us, so follow me. We're leaving. And Moses' response is, I preach sermons about this. Moses has lots of excuses. I think my sermon is called Moses' Excuses. But it doesn't seem like it's unreasonable to me. The thing that he asked is a reasonable thing to say. Hey, Moses, I want you to walk into this nation of people. Let's just say 1 million. I want you to walk into this group of 1 million slaves. I want you to start talking and saying, hey, everybody, God has saved us. Follow me. We're leaving. And Moses' response, it feels reasonable to me. He says, what if they don't believe me? And the thing that I want you to notice is that God does not say, just tell them that they need to have faith. Just tell them to believe harder. What I'm asking for this group of people is that you just believe Moses. Have faith in Moses. And Moses' question is, but what if they don't? And God says 3 things here. I want you to do this miracle. We're not talking about providence, God working within the scope of human nature. We're talking about an impossible thing according to the rules of this world. God steps in out of the supernatural realm, and he affects things and makes them happen that otherwise couldn't happen. And so God says to Moses, do this thing that is impossible to happen. And this is highlighted in my Bible because this is the point in verse 5. That they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to you. And so this is what I want you to see. He's asking the people to believe, but he's giving them something to base that belief upon. He's not asking for blind faith. He says, hey, look. The word that pops into my head is evidence or proof or validation. There's 1 million different things. There's 3 different words in the New Testament for miracles. Miracles, wonders. Wonder is a description of my response to it. And signs. He's given us a sign that this is a real thing. I'll stop talking here in just a second. There's at least 3 things that I wanted you to see in this. Verse 5. That they may believe. And then in verse 8, if they will not believe you or listen to the first sign, then do another one. Give them even more evidence. And then he says in verse 9, and if they don't listen to those 2 signs, give them a third one. And what I want you to see, this is the thing that I want you to see in this class. God has never, he is not asking us, he has never asked any of his people ever for what we would say blind faith. That is not the faith that we're asking for. When we say in this class, increase my faith, God's not saying, just believe harder even though it doesn't make any sense. That's not what this is.
I think about the purpose in the Gospel of John and how he says that all these signs were written down so that you may believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God. It's the same idea, just a couple thousand years later, to prove that their faith wasn't based in just, Jesus seems like a great guy. There were signs and wonders that point to it as well.
And John, yes, and John writes his gospel to say, hey, here's Jesus, believe in him. And you can almost imagine Moses saying, but what if they won't believe? And John says, well, let's give them miracles so that you may believe. Great. I saw Maria and then Adam.
I'm just saying, if you think about, God has done that for us with first Jesus coming and God in the flesh. Because God could have just kept saying, like, all of this stuff from heaven, you know, and not had the plan of salvation. But instead, he, you know, created this human being, Jesus, to come and die for us. I mean, and then if you think about also the whole Bible, I mean, that's just an entire book of miracles and God's revelation to us and his promises. And so that, you know, what he did for, what he was trying to do for these Egyptian slaves on a very small scale, I mean, that's just one example of an entire book of what he's done for all of us and future mankind.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Adam?
We're just kind of connecting it to who God is and his character, and it's like God is fair, and he's going to not set us up for something that's an impossible task. And you see, he gives sign A and B and C, and he gives plenty of reason, but then he still leaves room that you have to still have enough faith to make your call. And it strikes me, because you have Pharaoh up there, like, Pharaoh gets so many signs right in front of him, you know, just like the Jews in Jesus' day. And if you don't want to see, you can still decide not to. But
Yeah.
God is going to build that bridge and make it reasonable for you to have faith, but you still have to have faith. And he leaves that gap to say, do you trust me? Which
Yeah.
is fair.
Yes. I think of this all the time too. It's normally like every Easter. Just heads up on this. Right around every Easter, there's going to be some ridiculous headline in the news. And every couple years the headline will be something like, "We found Noah's Ark." And it's always around Easter. I don't know if it's because we're leaving the winter and the spring and it's like people are coming out of their holes, or if it's because we're thinking religious thoughts because it's Easter. I don't know what it is, but every Easter, here is new evidence that Jesus had a wife. There's always some ridiculous headline. We found evidence for Noah's Ark. And one question that I see sometimes is somebody says, I wonder why God didn't just save the ark so that we could see it and know. And then the question is, do you think it would make any difference? Like, no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. You can say, oh man, if only I could have seen that. No, we have what we need. And so let's look at this. I want to show you these. Adam mentioned Pharaoh. I'm going to read these three really quick. Exodus 3 and verses 19 and 20. It wasn't just signs to show the people that God is serious about who he is and what he's doing. It was also Pharaoh and the different signs, plagues that God gave him. Chapter 3, verses 19 and 20. I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it, and afterwards he will let you go. In chapter 4 and verse 21. The Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. So show him, Moses, show him. But God says to him, even with eyes to see, he's not going to see. And with ears to hear, he's not going to hear. He's going to have a hard heart. But give him what he needs. And then there's one last one in chapter 7, in verses 1 through 5. You'll notice if you look down on the page that we're about ready to start the first plague. Chapter 7 and verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of this land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, And though I multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my host, my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt. By great acts of judgment, the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the people of Israel from among them. And so the thing that I want you to see in these first two examples is God is not asking anybody. This is really important because I think that we need to have the same mindset. We're not asking anybody. God is not asking anybody to just close your eyes and jump without reason or without thought. He could have. He could have gone to the Israelites and to Pharaoh and said, believe me or not, I don't care. But at the end of the day, your kid's going to be dead. Believe me or not. He could have done that. But God said, no, I'm going to give you reason to believe first. And then you can either accept that reason or reject it, but I'm going to give it to you.
It just makes me think about, you mentioned the Ark, like Noah. Because it's a different tactic here with Moses, it feels like. I mean, he's given examples to go show to not have blind faith, but with Noah, it was just you, Noah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they had blind faith, or I don't know what that was, but certainly there was no examples for other people that were given. It was like, you're done. So it just feels like how we see God showing is a different approach than what it was.
Except this. I'm really glad that you said, you have given me the chance at redemption that I really wanted. I don't remember who, it was somebody over here last time. I don't remember who asked the question about Abraham. Did Abraham have any reason to believe in God last time? And I always do my best thinking in the shower 3 days after the fact. Because at the time I said, no, and I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything. You know, God told Abraham to do this thing, and he believed him, and I can't think of anything that's based upon your thing. God says to Noah, you know, hey, do this thing, and did he give him anything to believe it upon? And then I was like, well, I mean, God spoke to him. That's kind of something. I don't know what that's like, but whenever you hear the voice of God in your ears, like that's something a reason to believe.
But he didn't speak to the others.
You what?
He didn't speak to the others that he took off the earth. Right? It was kind of like what you said. He could have
Well,
said, you're done.
he spoke through Noah, though. Because in Peter, we're told that Noah was a preacher of righteousness. I don't know what that means, but here's Noah saying, hey, guys, God told me. Your point is well made. I'm just trying to get my own redemption out of it is all. I'm using your comment for my own purposes. So thanks a lot. Yeah.
So the ideas of like evidence and judgment, bringing that to Hebrews, where it's the idea of conviction. And I don't know the Greek context of the word, but in English you kind of have like two versions of that. Like personal conviction, which is just something like say a strongly held belief, but I don't really like that definition. And like conviction that someone else puts on you. Like a judge, you're either guilty or you're not. And that's based on the evidence. And I think even personally that's what we're doing to ourselves. It's based on the evidence. I convict myself of this.
Yeah.
So you kind of have this idea that we have the evidence here, and now it's our decision. God is not sentencing us one way or the other. We get to sentence ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have to either convict ourselves to life or convict ourselves to death. You kind of mentioned that about Pharaoh, that he didn't say, I'm going to kill your son one way or the other. He said, here's the evidence, you get to pick.
Yeah. I like that conviction. We should throw that word conviction into our like words that go along with faith, like believe. I believe, but conviction is kind of like believe 2.0. Like, I believe. I am convicted. That's kind of what I think
One
of.
phrase I like about it is it's a formal declaration, and like the idea of a
Oh,
judge,
yeah,
there's no
good.
going back from it. So once you make it, you're there, and there's nowhere else to turn.
Yeah, I like it. Jessica? Okay. So here's the point. All of this has been fun conversation, but to get to this point. Exodus chapter 10. In Exodus chapter 10, I want to show you a couple passages. We'll see what the time looks like. I've got 3 of them that I want to show you, but we'll probably have to do these 3. So the last thing on this is, here are the signs to convince the Israelites. Here are the signs to convince Pharaoh. I'm going to skip the Red Sea example. There's a picture of it, but the Red Sea example is the same thing. Like, here's the water standing up, and you're going to walk through it. Now you know, like, that doesn't happen by itself. Okay, and then we're getting ready to start. Oh, let's just read the Exodus 10, verses 1 and 2. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine among them." Now listen to this. "And that you may tell in the hearing of your son and your grandson how I have dealt harshly with the Egyptians, and what signs I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord." So, God does not constantly say to every generation of people or to every individual, "Hey, I want you to believe in me, and so, here's your miracle, Jay. Here's your miracle, Kevin." No, he said, "Here are the signs, and I'm going to write these down, and you're going to keep telling generations about these signs, and those signs are going to stand as my validation and my proof for all time." So somebody's going to say, "Whoa, I need a sign to believe today." You have one. It's written down for you. Read the sign. Read about what happened. "Well, that's a little harder to believe." Well, that's on you. But here it is. You can choose to read it and accept what it is or not. There's another one I want to show you. You can make your comment if you want. Just interrupt me as we go, but this is the same kind of thing. Numbers 14. Numbers 14, verses 1 and following. "All the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, the whole congregation of them. 'Would that we had died in the land of Egypt.' And they say at the very end of verse 4, we're going to choose another leader." And then look at verse 11. "The Lord said to Moses, 'How long will this people despise me? How long will they not believe in me, in spite of the signs that I have done among them?'" So it's not only that we're supposed to take this sign evidence and pass it down so that we can all know. It's that this sign evidence is the basis for all kinds of other beliefs. I believe that there is a God. I believe that he saves his people. I believe that Moses is his leader. I believe that he's going to feed us. I believe that he's going to provide water for us. I believe that even if I don't go out on Saturday to collect my food, I'm going to have enough because God's going to leave it over. Like, it's not that every single thing has its own validation or miracle. It's that the miracle says, here is God, and this is what he does. And then based on that, we continue to believe in him and his word. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Do we follow, Nick?
Sort of reminds me of just the nature of personal testimony. He says, this is going to happen in your life, Moses, and you're going to tell your children, your grandchildren, you're going to tell everyone about it. That's pretty much Moses sharing his testimony. Reminds me of Paul, who had this awesome experience with God that changed his life. And then every time he went to a new city, he told people this story. And it's like sometimes God works in our life and shows maybe us a miracle or something that happens in our life. And we're supposed to go and tell other people so that they might believe as well through our experiences.
Yeah, good.
That's how the Song of Moses ends as well. The Song of Moses is a recapping of all these great miracles, and he ends with, so that you will know the Lord reigns forever and ever.
Yeah.
It takes a
into the future.
Yeah.
We're talking about these miracles that happened at this time, at this place, so that you would know in the future God is still reigning.
Yeah, good. I like that too because I got to move on for the sake of time, but as we move into, I just remember when Ed was teaching Joshua, and God was saying to the people in the book of Joshua, go and take the land, and be strong and courageous, and do not fear. And then he always said, because you know what he did to his enemies in the past. So that faith is based upon something. It's not believing when there's no reason to believe. No, it is based upon something, and it goes forward. Last thing that I want to do, at least this morning, that I really want to accomplish. Let's see. Maybe we can get through 3 of these. Matthew chapter 9. This doesn't have to be the only one that you go to, but Matthew chapter 9 is always my go-to. And I talk about my hub sometimes. Matthew 9 is just the one that I can remember. And so all of these verses and all of this talk about all of these miracles that we're talking about, if I want to find this and be able to say this, in a Panera, and I don't have my notes with me, Matthew 9 is the place where it's all written down. Now maybe yours will be in a different spot, but Matthew 9 is mine. Let's read it. Verse 2. Matthew 9 and verse 2. Behold, some people brought to him a paralytic lying on a bed, and when Jesus saw their faith, what is that? They believed that Jesus could do something about this problem. And Jesus saw that they believed that, and that's what he wants. He says to the paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven. And people said, who do you think you are to forgive sins? And Jesus asks the question. And it's a hypothetical question. You're supposed to work through this yourself. What's easier to say? Your sins are forgiven, or take up your bed and walk? And you think through it yourself, and you're like, well, it's easier to say. I could say this to Mark, your sins are forgiven. Super easy to say. And how is anybody going to know whether or not it's true? Like, I could just say it. I can say anything I want about his sins. And it's just words. But Jesus says this. This is what's highlighted in verse 6. But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins, I say to you, rise, take up your bed, and walk. And so he does this miracle, and he tells us, I'm doing this thing to show you that when I say your sins are forgiven, you can know I'm telling the truth. And so that miracle is there for the reason of being a sign, a validation, a stamp. If this thing is true, then you listen to my words. And we jump all the way to the end of the story. If Jesus comes out of the grave and is risen from the dead, then we listen to him. If he doesn't come out of the grave, he's just another murdered dead guy, and we don't listen to him. But if he really was resurrected, then we say, I better listen to what that guy says. The miracle is the validation. How about this? The miracle is the basis of our faith. Anything you want to say on that?
A lot of this hinges on my acceptance of he knows something that I don't know. And that, to me, is the point of why I should believe. Because somebody's raised from the dead. I mean, there were people that said, no, I'm still not going to believe. The reality is, I mean, that's how all the other theories of creation have come about. There's these efforts to try to materialize something because I'm choosing not to believe in what is more believable. And so I'm going to chart my own course.
Yeah.
And that's where you get into dark water.
Yeah. I've got 4 minutes left, and so I'm not going to do these, although I will tell you, I really would like to go to the John 10 passage. I like that passage almost more than any other because Jesus specifically tells people, these are my words, I shouldn't use my words, I'll get myself in trouble. I was going to say, Jesus says, I don't care if you believe me or not. He doesn't say that. Jesus tells the people, don't believe me. That's fine. But when you see the miracle, believe the sign. He tells them that. He says, don't just take my word for it. And that is these other passages. These are the basis for why we have our faith, why we have our trust, why we have the thing that we're talking about this quarter. I'm going to just say one more thing because this is the natural question that comes next. Something like, well, it's all written down in this book, I'm just supposed to put my faith in this book and believe this book? No. This is where this takes a little bit of work, a lot of bit of work. But this is where you would start to examine the evidence and say, this is how it works for me. Okay, so one person writes, Paul. Who mentioned Paul? Was it you who mentioned Paul? So one guy, Paul, goes around telling people, hey, I saw Jesus and this is what he said to me. That might be a hard sell for me. But then I start thinking, Paul had everything and lost everything and was eventually put to death for this thing that he's saying. So I don't know, some people are crazy, maybe he's crazy. But then I think, Peter also said it, and so did Matthew, and so did John, and so did Paul, and they all wrote it down, and everybody in the world had plenty of opportunity to see what they were saying and to listen to it and to say, no, that didn't happen, I was there. Nobody did that. In fact, what you see with Jesus in the Gospels is Jesus' enemies are not denying that the miracles happened. They're saying that they happened through the power of demons. But they still acknowledge that the miracles happened. And so you just start to collect all of the evidence and put it together in one place. And at the end of the day, our faith is based upon what's more reasonable. What is the more reasonable choice? And you can do whatever you need to do. But I have decided it's more reasonable to believe that what this book says is true, and based upon the things written in this book, my faith is grounded and moves forward into all other parts of my life. And every one of us has to do that for ourselves. Every one of us has to say, based upon what makes more sense to me, I'm going to base my faith on this. And you could say, well, it makes more sense to me that we all used to be frogs. Maybe that makes sense to you. But God bless you if you do. Probably not, though. You can have the last word. Yep.
So, yes, everything you just said, I 100% agree. I would say even more, it's not just what we have written. It is definitely what we have written, and all of the miracles and that these men, and then all their message all agrees. It's all of that. But I would say Romans 1 and verse 20 kind of indicates that it's more than that. When we see the moon and the stars and the works of God's creation, Romans 1 and verse 20 says, we are without excuse for not believing, and I think that the point is believing that there is a God, or believing that there is a creator. And from there, once you kind of get past that step, you ask yourself, okay, we have a creator do we have any evidence that this creator, to your point when you talk about just what is the purpose of man, has this creator told us what we want to do? There's no other book, there's no other message that is profound as God's word in communicating to us in 2024 what we need to do to be pleasing to God. There are other collections of wise sayings, but nothing that contains the evidence that this book does as to what we need to do to be pleasing to the God of creation that I believe is mentioned in Romans 1 verse 9.
Yeah, wonderful. I would just end class with this. For 3 months, we're talking about faith. And after this class, you know, this class is not anybody saying, just try harder. Just believe more. That's not what this is. That's not the kind of faith we're talking about. And so next time what we're going to do, we're going to turn up, we're going to do faith, belief 2.0, and we're going to add on our foundation of belief, and we're going to move into trust. How is trust different from believing? And so that's next Sunday. Thank you all for your comments this morning.